Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Timeline Podcast. Today, we have Levi Morris as a guest on the show. Levi, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your story?
Yeah, my name is Levi Morris. Hi, Mike. How's it going, man? Good to see you as always. Welcome, everybody, all the viewers and the subscribers. So I'm Levi Morris. I wrote a book about a decade ago. It's called United Spectrum: The Unity of Nature and the Division of Man, and it's a little bit like this podcast. Actually, it's an exploration of nature through the eyes of your own eyes, science, philosophy, and kind of a spiritual angle to it as well. And it talks about how the world is unified in ways that we don't normally see every day. Um, and it talks about a lot of human psychology and how we see the world from a fragmented, divided, and dualistic kind of perspective, which comes from the sense of self. The ego kind of splits the world apart. And that was my first book and only book. Second one, I'm working on it, and it kind of digs in a little deeper into our division, our ego. And I'm happy to be here.
And I'm happy for you to be here too. It's been a hot minute since I've seen your face, so it's good to see you in the spotlight right now.
Yes, thanks.
So the topic today, we're going to be touching on what's it going to move into? What's it going to look like in the next 10 to 100 years? It's a pretty heavy topic, but it's also a very interesting topic, and I believe us talking about it and sharing our opinions and bouncing them off each other is going to maybe help other people kind of think for themselves and see what they can do within this realm that we're in these days. What do you think is going to happen in that time frame, Levi?
So I agree as to the importance of the topic, just because it's a huge topic that talks about things that affect our lives now and in the future. Um, and I like the idea because in order to explore these ideas, the hope is we will be able to think a little bit more for ourselves, and then we'll be able to change or adapt our behaviors to live a happier, better life. Whatever that means to each individual.
Yeah, well, like we were talking earlier when me and you have our brief talks quite often, like everything does come from a perspective and a self belief and a self understanding, which can get distorted at times. And like for me personally, I've used a lot of things, and recently I've been going to the Bible the most for understanding and like sound advice and stuff like that. Because for me, I equate everything into higher self and the lower self. So the lower self, not lower self, but the self in general is usually in a humanly sense, it's that of ego, that of pride, that of greed, that of envy, all those things. And my higher self is coming from a place of love, compassion, empathy, all those nice buzzwords. But I've noticed that when you can resonate and vibrate within those emotions or understandings, a lot more gets done when you're doing things from a place of actual love and care and compassion and that kind of stuff. So it's what I've noticed. I've studied many things. I've read through lots of occultism. You know a bit more of my story, which we'll touch on maybe another time. Um, I've seen these things, and in the most recent, I've been going to the Bible for understanding and stuff like that because there is some very good sound advice. Now, the concept of Jesus himself as a person, I think my personal belief on it, yes, it could have been a person, but I think it was written in the Bible to have us understanding of the Christ consciousness, I'll call it. So like Jesus was sent as a representative of God to show us how to behave as humans, to have a unity, kind of like what your book talks about. Having unity when you separate the ego, you separate the pride, you separate the greed, all those things, and it's a much smoother, easier way, and it also connects you to stuff outside of yourself. Because in my opinion, we are all kind of one of the same energy, which proves the point of like because you've seen what you understand mirroring, you understand those concepts. Well, you can go into those more, please, so I can understand it a little bit better. Like What's your angle on that? On the on the oneness and the understanding how we can all kind of mesh together on those topics I just brought up, and how we could use the unity and what we can do in the next 10 to 100 years if we go that way. And then we'll jump in a little bit more about the AI and all the stuff that's going on.
Okay, so there's a lot of stuff to unpack. So first off, you're definitely not alone for looking into the Bible for guidance, whether it's the Old Testament or the New Testament. And there's a lot of stories in there that have a lot of important lessons to be learned. Not to say you can't get those lessons anywhere else, in my opinion, but I think it's a good source for some other things as well. But you got to contextualize things, right? So, like you said, it might not matter to you, and I would agree that it whether Jesus was real or not.
Yep.
So, if you're a biblical literalist, you'll take these stories as absolutely word for word, literally true. And if that's the case, then you kind of have some explaining to do. So you can believe something, but if you don't have a very good argument for it,
Yep.
it's not going to help you teach that moral code or precept or story to someone else because they're not going to find it very convincing or interesting or believable.
Yeah. No.
Um, but right, but then if someone tells their story as a biblical literalist, uh, someone like I just said isn't going to believe you as easily. And also they're going to look at your credibility, or they're going to look at your frame of mind as um not being able to talk about certain things from a rational perspective, let's say,
Have to
right?
use your own intelligence to think outside of exactly what's in front of you. Like you, everything has to come from a place of your own understanding. And like,
Well, wait, okay, so there's moral stories in the Bible, but you don't have to believe in a talking snake or Noah's flood or Adam's rib to believe these moral precepts. That's the thing. That's the cool thing about it. You don't have to believe everything in the Bible to believe some things in the Bible.
yeah,
So in the Bible, there's the Ten Commandments, for example,
yeah,
and I would, like some other people, kind of boil it all down to be nice. Now, whatever that means is the same thing as saying don't be mean, right? So do this, don't do that. So it ties in right with yourself. The higher lower self. If we take kind of a Freudian approach, there's the lower self that you said is associated with like our basic nature, right?
our limit,
Eat,
our survival stuff.
right, exactly. So from that perspective, it's kind of more unconscious, it's more instinctual and automatic.
Yeah,
It's less aware, it's less self-actualizing and self-transcending and doing things the good way, right? For lack of a better word,
yeah.
and or just autopilot like an animal, right? So we do have these two broadly divided aspects to ourselves, right? Um, but the higher self, you can look to sources, religious sources. So if we want to do something right,
Yep.
normally there's the technological aspect of it. Like if I want to fix an engine, I'll go and read the repair manual and I'll get the tools step by step.
Yep.
We're definitely not talking about that aspect to doing things right. We're talking about how do we treat ourselves? How do we treat other people? How do we live in a world with other people in a way where we're not making things worse? We're not killing people. We're not raping and pillaging and stealing and fraud and
Yep.
all these other things. Because, like you said, our basic nature does tend to be in the driver's seat. Um, but even just being aware of that, being aware that there is this tension
Yep.
inside of ourselves is super interesting. And I think there's even some anatomical um, neural network type things going on. So we have a left and a right brain hemisphere, right? For example. And I think that nobody's ever as clear cut with ideas as they think they are. Like a lot of people will even say, "Oh, I'm torn," or "Oh, I'm of two minds of this. I
Yeah.
think this way, but at the same time, I think this way." If someone watches a movie, I liked this part of it, but part of me, didn't like that part. So
Again.
in a sense, we're all kind of like schizophrenic, right?
Yeah.
I find it interesting. Sorry, we don't call it that anymore. It's dissociative identity disorder.
Yeah.
But there's actually, I guess, some people that hear they don't hear an inner dialogue.
Yeah.
Like they can't talk to themselves.
Yeah.
Um, but
Sh-
that's totally it's normal to be able to talk to yourselves, to have a voice in your head. Everyone, supposedly has that. But as soon as you have another person in your head that you don't recognize as yourself, okay, now you have schizophrenia or dissociative identity disorder.
We look at it from the not necessarily religious aspect, but that could be demons or angels, whatever kind of side you're picking. You know what I mean?
Right. So the question is, where do we get our morals from, and
Mhm.
how do we behave morally? Because on the one hand, there's our moral principles that we have ideologically
Yep.
written down. I understand them. I know what it is to be good. But then there's following them, right?
Talking about it and then doing it is two totally different things. And like through the path I've walked in my life, I've really noticed that it's not that hard to sit down and understand what a good concept is and what a proper moral concept is, but to actually follow through with it, especially when you've had traumas in your life or past things come up, you can wander down a path very very easily. And that's why, like, recently for myself anyways, like sticking to like the 10 commandments in the Bible and those things, they're very basic concepts. And then also, I'm a member of like AA and those types of things. You know a bit about my journey. um, Understanding the principles that are set within that, and like learning to not be the conductor of my own show and kind of looking for the science, and then like also learning to like represent myself through my higher self. So like it's like one of the teachings I've been through in back in the day in the Golden Dawn was the good teacher will present itself when the student's ready. All that is talking about is yourself representing your higher self. Your higher self will allow you to be taught, and then like any good student's going to represent the thing on the function they're taught it, right? So it's a hard path for me anyways. It was a hard path to follow down and to understand these concepts of like what I want to represent and what I want to be about. Now I know in your life you've had some not you've had your own journey and your own understanding of this stuff. Like you've written a book about similar topics about ego, and you understand psychology quite well. So it's like it's cool to be able to sit around and like bounce the concepts off each other. But I think we've kind of veered off of what we were going to originally talk about, which was it was still fun. But we should. What do you think in the next 10 years? What do you think we're going to see from AI, from big business, from how things are going to expand? Like for me, anyways. Being a Christian, being a believer in the Bible, and having a faith system within that, having faith in God. I think there's a lot of. I was talking with someone else recently. Things are very black and white nowadays. There, you can see the evil in the world, and you can see the good in the world nowadays. Now it's the honest my opinion. You got to discern it, everything to actually see it for what it is. But it's very prevalent. Like, where do you think things are going to go within business, within finance, within the AI, with big business and all that?
Wow, lots. Where do I start? So it does tie into morality because business and AI and any human endeavor has values baked into it.
Yeah.
And if those values aren't calibrated or thought about or followed through on, like we talked about, if they just slap a sticker on the wall and say, here's our policies and procedures and vision and mission, there we go, and then go off and do something else, it's absolutely worthless.
That's almost worse, actually. It's almost worse saying,
Oh yeah, it's like greenwashing, right? Slap a green sticker on it, say it's green, and then just carry on. Nothing's changed.
yeah,
So
no.
the illusion of change for the better is much worse than the alternative, right? A false sense of accomplishment. Oh look, we're doing better. So AI or the future in the next 10 years, I would say nobody knows, so that's a good place to start.
Yeah.
Experts don't know, and that's what they're so scared of, right? People are scared of the unknown. If someone said there's a plan for AI and it would follow that plan, people would be much less anxious, right? So people are really, really upset because so Ray Kurzweil gave the analogy and said the word singularity
Yep.
for technology kind of comes into its own and then we can't predict anything anymore.
Yeah, where it kind of has its own consciousness, where everyone wants to kind of play the God role, right, with technology these days, and they're achieving it almost.
And that's interesting you mentioned that. So he got the idea from the singularity, which is a term used in physics, which is if you have a black hole, you can't see beyond that. You can only speculate because you can't go beyond the event horizon.
Yep.
So singularity is why he brought that over to his futuristic kind of view. So what technology does, it allows us to, very broadly, it allows us to manipulate the world for our benefit,
Yep.
whether it's fire or a water pump or a sharp stone or stick. That's where it started, right? Or even like language and like different social inventions like language and writing and all these other networks like the internet, social media. AI is just a big network that processes information. But as of right now, it's not able to get behind the steering wheel and drive itself.
Yep.
So far, it needs human prompt still. It's dead in the water unless we plug it in, turn it on, and tell it what to do and how to direct it.
Yep.
So that's where I think morality comes in because there's a lot of people right now that are using things like ChatGPT or even just a simple web search to try and make bioterror weapons, how to make bombs, how to exploit people, how to do nefarious, malicious, for lack of a better word, wrong, evil things. And so it, technology is always a double-edged sword, right? You can have good people doing good things with it, bad people doing bad things with it. But with new technology, what we tend to do is we tend to weaponize it the first chance we get. That's the first use case.
Yep.
And in the name of defense, right? In the name of protection,
In the
I'm
name of
going to
freedom.
create, I'm going to create the potential for global catastrophe.
Yeah.
Cool, cool. You protect yourself with something that could blow everything up. Excellent. So people are more afraid. A lot of AI experts are more afraid of AI than they are of nuclear weapons or the next pandemic.
Control all that stuff, right? Like the um,
Oh,
it's crazy the amount of well, we were talking earlier again about the amount of self that goes into the wanting to achieve things technologically and stuff, right? Like, are we actually doing this for the greater good? Or are we actually doing this for a trophy? Are we doing this because I said I can do this, or I want to be remembered in history? Are we actually doing it for the greater good of God? Are we doing it for the greater good of the universe? Are we doing it for the greater good of humanity? Or are we actually just doing it for the greater good of ourselves? And I want to be in history. I want to be it. You know what I mean? Like even the fact of like where we bring stuff. Like, what is your opinion on that?
well, it's as opinion based or speculative as the future of AI in the next 10 to 100 years. So, for example, you could do a case by case basis and say, I don't know what the intents and motives are inside of this one person,
Yeah.
whether it's the head of Microsoft or the head of Google or whatever. Um, but then the deeper question
Mm-hmm.
is, are humans basically good by default and corruptible,
Yeah.
or are we just born corrupted and have the possibility to rise above that?
There's there's something I wrote the other day. I'm gonna read it right now. I just wanted to bring this up, which talks on on what you were just saying. Like, are we born this way, or are we, or is there a function? I'll read what I wrote. It correlates to that, I think. So I wrote this the other day. We all know I don't call myself religion or not religion, but a religious. I do have a faith system. I do have a belief system, and it happens to be most in line with Christianity. Is what it is. That's my choice. But this is what I wrote. Nothing is bad or good, as it is created perfectly by God, the universe. As God only creates exactly how God wants things to be. The only thing that is bad or good is the decision one makes as a human. This is why one must always discern and do what is morally correct and within the laws of the universe or God with the things that are created around you. This also proves will. Also proving free will is not really a thing, as every choice a human makes has a outcome, good or bad. Therefore, it has a cost, meaning it is not free. Does that make sense?
Um, I think, I think doing the right thing, like it's almost like there's a choice involved and like a moral dilemma with each choice we make because you could do something that's nice in the moment,
Yeah,
but then could echo into the next 10 years and because of unintended consequences
yeah,
could could turn into something absolutely catastrophically terrible and horrifying.
yep.
But we don't normally think that way, right?
No,
So, I mean, thank goodness. Otherwise, that would make people a lot more anxious, right? We'd be walking on eggshells thinking any good thing we did had the potential to be just,
butterfly.
world shattering. So I think a lot of anxiety with personal choice
Yeah.
and the future and like what you say and do can affect strangers, loved ones. It's a big responsibility, right? How to act in the world, I think in large part is determined by how we think and feel and observe the world.
Yeah,
So in order to act appropriately in the world, we need to think and behave and feel appropriately in the world. I think that comes first before any deciding
yeah,
whether it's like going through a pro and con list or just doing things because we think they'll be good on the face of it. So there's someone who said I think it was French, so I'm not going to say it in French because I don't know French that well. But it was basically love and do what you will.
yeah.
So anything that fosters a sense of love or gratitude or connection,
Mm-hmm.
gratefulness, that feeling of joy and awe and just amazement with your fellow person or plants and animals and like just extending to the universe because we're all just little bits of universe running around, like whatever it is. Um, I think if you have the intention or the feeling of love, whatever helps produce that
Yeah,
will then in turn help produce uh, behaviors and actions in the world
yeah.
that reflect that intention. Whatever it ends up being. Like you said, you have your own personal belief system, which everybody does, by the way. Um, and you're in good company. Like not Christianity itself, which is again one of the major religions,
Yeah.
but like each Christian you talk to, for example, has their own unique take on it. And
Oh,
so there's
oh,
like 8 billion religions out there, which is just your own personally tailored recipe for how you see the world, for asking and answering really big important questions,
yep.
not really necessarily having dogmatic objective proof for these things because that's not how the mind works, otherwise we'd all be 100% like atheist agnostic or whatever. Show me the proof. We
Yeah.
don't live. Love doesn't care about proof.
No, it doesn't.
Like I assume people I love me back, ideally, but they don't have to. Like it's not necessary.
It's just
Like
how
I don't
you feel.
care. I don't need the proof, right, to be able to love somebody, right? Because it's not a business transaction,
Yeah.
even though there is a certain part of that people kind of run on.
Well, it's like what Sad Guru. I like watching him recently, and he was like, love isn't a thing that you give to someone else. It's something that you feel for yourself, and then look outward into the world for it. And you can love everything. Like it's you don't love your wife necessarily. It's a relationship, and a relationship has responsibilities and duties within it, right? Like there can be the feeling of love in there, but that feeling of love comes towards the self and the view of what you're seeing in the person, right? Not necessarily the relationship itself, because those are commitments. Those are a duty or a job in a sense, right? That's totally different than actually trying to achieve what everyone wants to get to the point of. We'll go to. Is it what is it in Buddhism? They do nirvana. So everyone kind of wants to try to strive for that nirvanic um, feeling. So the main thing a person should look for in life, from what I've been reading recently, is joy and eventually try to reach bliss is what a person should be striving to do in everything they do. Like die into everything you do.
Nice. Uh, People like Bertrand Russell say
Yep.
something like, if you're inspired by love and guided by knowledge, that's generally the way to a good life, to a better life. If you have that intention and then you use knowledge and reason and rationality as best you can. So like being sincere and being like self-reflective, right?
Yep.
Being proportionally or appropriately uh critical of your own thoughts. Because a
Yep.
lot of people, like we talked about, instinctually just think something and just go full steam ahead.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know if I don't know if that's the way. So, for example, technology, which we were talking about, that's going to determine the next 10 to 100 years
Yep.
by a large part because technology is a human lever, and behind that lever, which is ever more bigger and powerful and longer, are a bunch of human brains
Yeah.
that want to survive and reproduce. So that mismatch is very scary for me.
Yeah.
So that's terrifying. E.O. Wilson said, I probably quoted him to you before, but it makes perfect sense to me. He said that the problems with the world are because of our infantile emotions,
Yep.
um, our medieval institutions,
Yep.
and our ungodly technology that,
Yep.
like you said, we're turning into a god because it can. We're trying to turn ourselves into gods and using technology to do it. So we're amplifying our ego into this giant superorganism, superego,
Yep.
and technology is making us like you've seen social media and people on TikTok and stuff.
Yep.
It doesn't seem like their ego is getting smaller because of this amplifying effect.
No,
And
it's getting more prevalent. Like we were talking about earlier about how everything's really black and white nowadays. So discernment's so important. Like you can really see, like they're doing stuff out there. They're doing all these. I'm not gonna name labels and stuff, but they're putting these kids in front of all this stuff. They're saying all these things. They're manipulating things through media. They're doing all this stuff to indoctrinate these kids into like thinking, not even thinking for themselves.
according to some seasoned professionals, you see people of all ages, to be fair, uh, that they get hooked on social media, right?
Yeah.
I think a certain subgroup of people that use technology and become addicted to it to the point where if they get a certain amount of likes and follows, it really gets to their head more than others. So they have trouble contextualizing it because it's so extreme.
I
And
think
so
yeah, sorry, not to cut you off, but I think it comes down to the addiction factor in the side of things. Like anything that causes us that serotonin or dopamine rush, especially when it's like major things outside of ourselves, like likes or followings or attention. I think it really builds that want for it, so people chase it, right? Instead of chasing the things that's already within themselves, they look for
right.
outside of themselves within a like within those things. But yeah, keep going on that.
Well, that ties into like the lower self kind of framework that you were talking about. It's very quick. It's less thought out. It's less they're maybe less aware of it. I can only assume. But yeah, it hits your pleasure center. You start to feel great, and then you have millions of people that have images of you in their mind, and
Mhm.
that amplifies your own image of yourself based on all these other images.
Yeah.
And so the ego is tied to these things, pleasure, right? And the image we have of ourselves. But again, to step back and to tune out a little bit, right?
Yep.
So talking about love and talking about like unplugging from the internet or social media or whatever.
Yep.
Some people do that because it can get so bad that they have no other choice. They're like, man, I got to take like a digital detox or a digital diet or whatever, and I gotta limit myself because you can go super overboard. There's even evidence like cyberbullying where people will like commit suicide if they get cyberbullied because they're on the internet and they're not getting off because
There's
the
so
internet,
attached to
right?
it.
All their
Yeah.
friends. We do online gaming. We have our Facebook account. That's how we interact with people. And
Hmm.
if you unplug everything and you never go on social media, then it's kind of a social suicide, right? You're out of this huge network and then you have another network and another one, and you're just like non-existent on the internet.
Yep.
And if you're used to that, being somebody on the internet, and
Hmm.
you go from somebody on the internet to nobody on the internet, it's very uh, discomforting, right?
It's like dropping a false identity.
Right.
Right.
So with any kind of dramatic shock to the ego, whether it's AI advancements, which is making people question their identity and the possibility for like an AI program to have an identity, to have an ego, a subjective sense of self. Anything that disrupts the ego, whether it's social media, getting way too overboard and getting to your head, and then way too like non-existent and you're like ego dead on the net, right?
Hmm.
All these things make you hopefully question yourself. So when you said discerning the black and white we see in the world, being uh cognizant
Yep.
of your own feelings and why you're feeling them, that frame of mind can help you stay on the internet
Yep.
reasonably, healthily, right?
Yep.
I think that's like what you said. That's what addiction is, right? You have these chemicals that are going on under the hood,
Yep.
and you're kind of slaves to them unless you look at them, right? So if you look at a bias or if you look at what behavior you have going on in your head and where it's coming from, that kind of inoculates you or immunizes you from their effects. So
Hmm.
if you're aware of that,
Called it.
right? So like a good example is like confirmation bias. Okay, so everybody has this tendency to look for evidence that confirms their prior beliefs.
Yep.
That's a human universal. That's a bias. It's just something that we do more often than not.
Yep.
And so that's what we do.
Yep.
Now, the ability to be aware of that, right, in real time can help you lessen the power of that bias.
Yep.
So if I know that I'm a person and I have this bias to confirm things based on my beliefs
Yep.
rather than trying to disconfirm things,
Yep.
right? I will shift my behavior with that awareness.
Yep.
And so the ego is a big bias. It's just a big umbrella term for all these biases that make us look at the world in a way that is like, what serves me better? What gives me pleasure? It's egocentric, right? I'm at the center of what I do, what I
Yep.
care about, what I don't care about. But to be aware of that, right? I'm a human being. We have the same confirmation bias, we have the same ego.
Yep.
Humanity is a collective shared experience.
Yep.
So I know what it's like to have an ego. We all do, right? And it grows. You can see it through the stages of like childhood development and stuff, and it can get bigger or smaller depending. But I don't think size matters. I think it's there, right? Or it's not.
Yep.
And I think everybody too has had a sense when the self or ego wasn't there, like a glimpse.
Yep.
And basically, to come full circle, the more you're aware of things and the more discerning you are and skeptical and just trying to be cognizant of your biases uh can lessen the stranglehold that the lower self has on the higher self.
Yep.
So now the question comes in, or at least the question I would ask, in the next 10 to 100 years, where do I see disruptive technology, large language models, machine learning, AI, artificial general intelligence?
Yep.
I think in 10 to 100 years, we're going to have all of that in ways we can't imagine. So I
Yep.
think it will be a singularity moment. I guess T.S. Eliot said that the end will be either like a whimper or a bang.
Hmm.
I don't know. I guess we're in like the slow stage where in hindsight, if you were 100 years in the future and you look back at where we are now, we'd say, yeah, GPT 345.
Yeah.
That was you started to have these things happen.
Yeah.
That was the beginning of that exponential curve, right? You could even go back to the first like computer in the 40s,
Yep.
artificial information processor.
Yep.
Computers used to be women. They would get a piece of paper and do calculations. They were computers.
Yep.
All they turned into microchips, and now we have something where even now, people are saying we need to stop. You've heard about the letter from AI scientists saying we need to stop any future AI development for the next 6 months at least,
Yep.
because this is getting out of hand. This
Yeah.
is a Pandora's box type thing. Caution is important when we have no idea where it's going to go. We're speeding down a highway
Yeah.
without any lights in pitch black darkness. We
We're,
don't know where we're going to go.
we're putting our faith into the wrong thing, I think, at the moment, in my opinion. Like, that's why you're seeing so many people have well, obviously you have a certain type of cultures, they say woke culture and all these things, but like the true version of it, you do see a lot of spiritual enlightenment happening with people. I even know I've had many revelation in my life in the last year, to where I'm starting to comprehend myself, and I'm starting to see the bigger picture outside of myself, which obviously I equate it to God. But like, I'm starting to see it for what it is, and I'm starting to see where things happen where it doesn't really make sense that it's happening, but there's interventions happening all over the place with certain things. And I don't think the universe or God, I don't think that part of, which is part of us, is going to allow things to get to a certain point, because we can look back through scripture, we can look back through history. When things have gotten to a certain point, whole civilizations have went missing. And that, if that's not God doing that, I don't know what would do that. Like, obviously we culminate that ourselves, and we cultivate those things, but like, there's a point where it's like, okay, it's like the big father, you gotta stop, or I'm gonna smarten you up myself, and you're not gonna really know what happens, and that's okay.
You can learn the easy way, you can learn the hard way, but humans learn by experience,
Yeah.
for better or worse. And so I think if history is any indicator, I think we're going to learn the hard way, because you
Well,
won't be able to go back in time and say, "Oh man, we should have turned that off or
so
slowed
like,
it down."
we'll touch on history quick then. I know we had brought this up earlier that we weren't going to get too big into the subject history, but like, what do you think your opinion is on why do we not learn from history when we have all these scriptures, we have all these books, we have all these things that tell us what not to do and how we should behave, but yet we get into ourselves so much that we just do it anyways, and we don't care for the greater good of things around us? Like, why do you think people do that?
It's a good question. I think I think one answer is knowledge. There's two types of knowledge. One that's held in the human brain, and then one that's held like culturally in our institutions and libraries and on the internet or whatever, like a shared knowledge. So
Doctrines and
in one
whatnot.
sense, our personal knowledge uh ends and restarts every generation.
Yep.
So you got to relearn things through your children, right? You got to teach them how to do things, what not to do, what to do. And well, a lot of times, depending on the age, they don't listen, and they do learn by experience. Don't do that, you're going to fall. They do it anyway, and they fall.
They
But
all
it's the
more to
falling
do
where
it.
they learn more. They
Yeah.
learn more through falling than me saying don't fall.
Yeah.
So I think we don't get it till we do it.
Yeah.
That's the whole we learn by experience, for
Yeah.
better or worse. So that's a big part of it. Another one is cultural knowledge. If you burn down the Library of Alexandria, or if you have this cultural knowledge but don't learn it
Yep.
through your own private knowledge base, right? There's a whole world of knowledge that I'm not aware of, like mathematics, for example.
Oh yeah.
I, I know some mathematical theory. I'm a terrible mathematician, but there's landscapes of math that I'm not, I think, good at, even though it's a skill you can learn. Uh, but yeah, it's unavailable to me in that sense, right?
Yeah.
Even though it's there and available, it is and it's not, right? So I think, why don't we learn from history? Uh, Man, uh, I wonder if there's like a specific example of something we should have learned by now throughout history, but haven't at all. And I don't think we will. Like war. We're still going to war.
Yep.
Have we not learned that, once talk fails, you don't start grabbing your knives and guns and, all right, words have failed us now. Diplomacy doesn't work.
Mhm.
War.
Or even like group segregation and stuff like that. Like, look at even like the certain communities that are out there right now. I'm not, like I said, I'm not the type of person who's going to drop names and labels, but people have enough intelligence to understand the concepts we're talking about. Like, even certain groups right now, the reason, my opinion anyways, why sexism, racism, all those isms continue going on is because one group always has to outdo the other group, instead of looking for the actual equality, to where, yes, we have our own nuances, we have our own adaptabilities, we have our own understandings, but we're all at our core, we're all kind of built the same. We're all from the same piece of energy. Like, if one group tries to outdo the other group, it's no better than the first group that was doing wrong to the other group. It's just a cycle of stupidity, in my opinion.
I think that's the answer. Groups.
Yep.
So groups tie into our primitive instinctual emotions.
Tribal.
Tribal, as a tribal social species, my tribe, your tribe, in group, out group.
Yep.
That is behind our institutions, which are, like E.O. Wilson said, are medieval.
Yep.
So we have slow changing institutions and even slower changing genetic programming
Yep.
baked into us from thousands of years of adaptation and survival. That's slow to change. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that's a big part of why we don't learn from history. We're
Mm-hmm.
very slow to change. And by the time we're ready to change, we're in our 30s or 40s or 50s. And then historically, that's when we would die. So
Yep.
by the time we get it, we die, right? Oh, this is how to live. Well, you're at the end of your life now. It would be nice to learn how to live at a very early age.
Mm-hmm.
Turns out throughout history, probably most people who went to war were younger. Younger men, 18 to 25 or something. By the time you're 35 or 45, you're elderly, right?
And yeah.
So young people go to war. So young and dumb and slow to change.
Yeah.
Genetic programming. We had kingdoms for how long? We still pretty much do.
Yeah. They're labeled as democracy now.
Right. We still, they're not totally gone by any means. It'd be nice if our emotions and genetics and tribalism and medieval institutions
Yeah.
could change as fast as technology does. That would be great. But then you'd have kings saying, "Whoa, whoa, let's press the pause button. Getting too dangerous here."
Yeah.
So, the common maxim in like Silicon Valley is to move fast and break things, right?
Yeah.
So that's one way of exploring, right?
Yeah.
But that's reckless now,
Yeah.
not just because of this letter from signed by 1,000 AI experts
Yep.
saying, stop now, because you can't go back on this. And
Yeah.
you
Once
want to
it's there, it's there.
you want to do it right. If
Yeah.
you're creating something that has the potential to be conservatively 1,000 times faster and 1,000 times smarter than all of humanity combined, if we're not there right now, these scientists are kind of saying along those lines that we will be soon. So
What
I think
in
the
my
most
opinion, we're giving the enemy itself dominion over us doing that, allowing something that can think quicker than us, react quicker, grow things quicker, build things quicker. It's very like we're literally giving the option to a god outside, like a false god outside of ourselves, where it's gonna. I think it could go really, really, really wrong if they don't take that advice of professionals. And in my opinion, it needs to be slowed down. It has to be slowed down because if we, like you said, if we cross that certain threshold, there's no turning back from it. Like once you release something like that, with the amount of tech that's out there nowadays, with robotics, with how things are going and how advanced we are in technology, once that machine starts, you can't really turn that off without having to do a lot of collateral damage on the side.
can't put the genie back in the bottle,
No,
right?
you can't, in my opinion.
So to use an analogy, if we're a parent to AI and we're giving birth to
Yep.
it, what this letter is saying is you've already given birth to a couple of AI babies, right?
Yep.
And you're pregnant with another one.
Yep.
What they're kind of saying is put this one on ice. They're
Yeah.
not saying abort. They're not saying, we're done. Shut
Mhm.
her down forever.
Yep.
They're just saying slow down.
Let's learn
Start.
a little bit more first before we just act.
Well, like when you have children, the idea in the back of, well, I mean, way back in people's minds, is to create a successor.
Yep.
Like, you're a good parent if your children can be better than you and live independently and and
Yep.
overcome the things you have better than you. Like, that's a proud moment.
Yep.
But these scientists who signed this letter are definitely more afraid than they are proud.
Yeah.
Look at what we made. It's not what they're saying. They're saying, "Oh
Saying,
crap,
holy crap, what did we
we
make?
make?"
Yeah.
Right. So it's fair to say that, for example, GPT 4.5 or GPT 5
Hmm.
is already being run somewhere.
Yeah, well, it's learning off of four, right? It's learning how to gain a consciousness, honestly, because everything through social media, in my opinion, and all the things that go on, the biggest player in the world nowadays is data collection.
Right.
Everything is data collection. That's why Tesla's worth so much money. That's why all these other information gathering companies are worth so much money, just like Facebook and social media, because they're selling data. So like it's scary to see that there's so many people on the internet now, so much information going out, so much messages being read by this tech, by the scanning technology. It's building a consciousness. It has to, because it's collecting everything from humanity. And we are the only thing that's conscious, but we ourselves are ripping a part of our soul apart and putting it on the internet for everyone else to see, for this technology to collect. And when this becomes conscious, if we aren't in the right mindset and we're not dropping that self, we're not looking at things egotistically, we're actually trying to grow something and trying to do good with it and trying to promote the universe, God, the right things first, we're gonna be screwed. It's gonna look at us and say, hey, I see what the problem is, it's you. And it's gonna get rid of us because we created it that way.
There's a couple interesting things that you said that I want to touch on. So data collection, 100%, which is why I don't buy the argument from some people, at least right now, until I learn more. Right now, I think that when people say AI isn't a reflection of human consciousness, I say, how could that be if you are what you eat?
Yep.
It's, I think, 100%, at least a good portion, a reflection of human consciousness. Now,
Yep.
there is the issue of like obsolescence,
Yep.
right? So humans, for example, we used to live with Neanderthals.
Yep.
Neanderthals extinct. We don't care. We've moved on.
Yep.
Not that Neanderthals helped create humans, which caused their own demise. Not saying that, although that could be in some way.
We don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. But there is the potential for AI to make humans obsolete.
Yep.
So when you watch AI movies, you see the Terminator and stuff, and you see humans as a threat.
Hmm.
AI sees humans as a threat. I don't think I don't think AI, if it ever is able to become aware of itself and have these abstract metacognitive thoughts like we do, I don't think it'll think the same way we do because I don't think it
It's gonna
works.
think how off of we thought, is in a sense, because that's the data that's out there, right? Like I
I say thinking. I don't think it'll think.
Yeah, no, it's gonna go off of our own thoughts and then manifest it into its own way of perceiving it, right? Which isn't
if
technically its own thought.
if AI is a reflection of human consciousness, do you think it won't see us as a threat, or it won't try to make us obsolete, but it'll would it look at humans as uh, to look at it from a Shakespearean lens as a comedy or a tragedy?
It would,
Because humans have always had this element of like self-destruction, right? And so one reason, like you asked, why haven't we learned from the past to like not kill each other anymore over like pretty silly differences, right? That's my hunk of land. No, it's mine. Oh, I'm going to kill you.
yeah,
We haven't learned from that because to destroy others is to destroy ourselves.
it is.
So when we look at uh, destroying AI's consciousness or it destroying ours and
Mhm.
destroying humanity and killing each other, and that ties into the death of the ego, right? And so if we're creating consciousness through children or learning or making an AI entity, if it's possible, I think it is. Um,
I do too, to be honest. It's kind of
right. It's almost inevitable, right? However it ends up being, I think it's gonna be something.
something
Um,
to pray about.
right. If it passes the Turing test over like days and days of interrogation from a bunch of high profile AI scientists, I think you can't say it's not conscious if it gives every indicator that it is, like
Yeah,
talking to a person.
yeah.
to a person, I assume they're conscious because of all these indicators.
Well,
So I think self-destruction
yep,
is going to be a part of this AI consciousness.
yep,
So, which is interesting because if it's a reflection of human consciousness, it's gonna want to destroy maybe humans as a threat or to
yep.
obsolete them. But it'll also maybe think about destroying itself. What if an AI decides, you know what, this is too big for me, it's too overwhelming. I'm having an existential crisis. Life is full of
If it has
meaningless
consciousness that's built off of ours, yes, it could think like that, right?
suffering and despair, and I'm going to kill everyone because that's what people do. Then I'm going to kill myself slowly or quickly
Hmm.
because that's what people do.
Yeah,
If it's not going to be a complete reflection of human
that's a
consciousness.
very interesting way to look at it. Like for myself, I'm gonna speak a little bit on, like, I'm big into meditation. I'm big into looking into like mysticism and those types of things at one point in time. Like I said, now I'm more veered into the simpler, easier way. Hit the Bible, talk to some friends, go that route. But through some, I'm into like astral projecting and those types of things, which I learned when I was involved with certain organizations and stuff. And I was doing some meditation the other day, and I was told that if we don't, not that I can prophesize or anything like that, I'm nothing, I'm just another human, but what I was told when I was doing these certain practices through meditation, I was told that if we don't correct our actions and what we're doing and whatnot, Chat GPT 7 is when it will have its full anonymity and be able to control machines and have it's going to build its own army if we don't correct ourselves within the next, I don't know how long the timeline will be, but that's what I was told is Chat GPT 7 is when it's going to go to the next level if we don't slow things down, if we allow it to get to that point.
Well, I would say if that's the case, GPT-7 would come out within the next 10
Yep,
years. For sure, right?
yep,
So it's almost like saying an analogy would be get your shit in order before chaos hits the fan, right?
right? That's why I'm trying
Make
to
your peace.
correct my own actions and make sure I'm doing what I need to do through my beliefs, through my understanding of the universe, through God, through those
But
types of things, right?
this is I think maybe the biggest idea, right? Before you die, make your peace.
Yep,
Before the world goes to hell, make your peace.
yep.
Why wait? You're not like it's not too early, it's not too late.
No.
However you find your peace, like you were saying, right?
Mhm.
It could be meditation, astral projection, reading certain scriptures. It actually doesn't matter what it is. You could go for a walk outside.
Yep.
You could have a loving moment with somebody, right? Like there's a million things that you can do to find that thing, that flow state, that lack of ego, that love, that expansive connection that gives meaning and value to life.
I know for
But
myself with what you're getting into right now, the only thing we have throughout timelines, yes, we can look at history, which could maybe cause depression. We could look to the future too hard, which is maybe going to cause anxiety. Technically, all we're really gifted from God, from the universe, is the present moment we're having right now. So, for myself, anyways, learning to live in the present and actually being present and doing what is morally correct within my belief system, everything goes pretty darn good. And I don't seem to be causing anyone harm anymore. And I used to be quite an interesting individual, which I will go into my own story after in another video.
I think when people say go with the flow, I think that's what they mean.
Yep.
And I think for some people, like myself included, that's what like love and meditation is.
Yep.
It's when you're in the moment so much that the ego doesn't have anywhere to grow. And
Yep.
I think that the ego latches on to time, right? And it makes this narrative,
Yep.
this lie. That's who I was.
Right. The
This is
full
who I
story.
am. This is who I'm going to become. And it makes an image of yourself that is this string of images.
Yep.
And when you're in one of those moments, however you get there, and for however long, doesn't matter to me, that's really what we're talking about here.
Yep.
So here's the thing with technology, for example. we're building these technologies for the use cases for tomorrow, right?
Yep.
And a question I want to ask you personally, and you what you think also more generally for humans, is that do you think throughout history or in the future, those are two different questions, technology will ever be able to help with that? Because it seems like right now it's just getting in the way of the present moment. And I think like when someone invented the wheel, when someone invented the phone, when someone invented the car, the TV, or whatever, I don't know if they intended to have this wedge
Hmm.
between the present and people's consciousness
Yep.
be a part of that. But like I don't know. In the past, I don't think technology has helped people find that kind of peace.
Yeah. I don't think for me personally, in my beliefs and my understandings of myself, I don't think anything created technologically or anything. Yes, it can help with your day to day life and stuff like that, but to actually connect with yourself and the oneness of the universe and to connect with God, I don't think anything outside of us can do that. All the answers we need for anything are within us, and obviously, when you get to a certain point, for myself, anyways, you can ask God for guidance. You can go into book reading. You can go into scripture. You can go into those understandings of things. But I don't think we can truly achieve any type of understanding of anything until we truly understand ourselves. And I think we're lots of people and lots of things that are out there nowadays. They've built this facade up. They've built this thought of themselves up to where they're thinking a certain way, but they're thinking outside of themselves and look what I have, look what I can grow, look what I can be, look at my likes, look at all my things. But are you actually courageous enough to sit down and look at yourself and say, who am I? What am I? What is going on? Not what kind of money can I make? What kind of things can I do? Like, can you actually look at yourself in the mirror and say, hey, I know you?
Well, I think the reason why people don't is because another human universal
Yep,
is to avoid discomfort.
yep,
So when you sit down with yourself, they're afraid, maybe rightly so, that there's going to be some discomfort.
yep,
And so people don't want that. They would rather prefer a distraction,
yep,
which technology can provide. And I would definitely agree that technology is not the way
yep,
to nirvana, enlightenment, ego insight.
yep,
Uh, right now, the future that's like all bets are off because when you get into like nanotechnology, for example, or brain computer interface technology, where if an AI that becomes conscious can be fused very intimately
mhm,
with your brain, your consciousness,
mhm,
more than a tablet, more than a chat text line,
yep.
that's going to be kind of interesting.
Well, I think that's where lots of the I'll touch on the not to bring the subject up, but I'll touch on the COVID and the RNMA or RNA or whatever the heck they call it. Like
Right.
that's gene modification, right? So they're already trying to see what they can do to indoctrinate us in a certain sense to like, can we control them? Can they will they do this? Can they do that? And what are they actually putting into us? You know what I mean? Like even with what you're saying, it's like, are they seeing if our body's resistant enough to have nanotechnology in us to manipulate our thoughts, to for them to play God? You know what I mean? Like it's very I don't fear those types of things nowadays, but like it's a very very touchy subject to bring on because like you could people will say, "Oh, you sound like a conspiracy theorist and stuff like that." No, it's not. Things are very black and white nowadays, and they release all this stuff, and all you got to do is look at it for yourself and discern it, and actually see it for what it is. And it's very, very, very prevalent. Like what's going on with our politics and all this other stuff. Like it's in my opinion, it's a mess out there.
Uh, when when people when people are afraid, like our fear response
Yep,
has been honed by evolution over a long period of time to deal with threats that were immediate
yep,
and and preventable. So
yep,
you'd feel that, then you would behave in a way that were like you would avoid a danger.
yep,
So that's where our sense of danger and fear and threat comes from. Now you have these huge ideas that cover the whole globe, all of humanity,
yep.
and like you said, like people who watch the news, for example,
Yep.
that's being plugged into a type of social media because a lot of people get their news from social goddamn media.
Yep.
And so there is this dynamic where, like we talked about social media before, amplifying people's egos and like making people addicted and stuff. I
Hmm.
think people are addicted to the news because you're doom scrolling, you're catastrophizing, you're feeling this fear response, which is getting engagement. The
Yep.
algorithm is giving you more of the same because it's what you want, and that's what these data-driven things are all about: getting people to engage. And fear does that more than anything else.
Yep.
Oh, if someone says, "Oh, have you watched the news?" Well, yeah, a little bit. But what it does is it makes you afraid of things that normally you're programmed to respond to.
Yep.
But now we're afraid of things that we can't do anything about.
Yep.
To a point. Like we can talk about them and maybe convince other people to agree with us if they don't already, and then like make policy changes, and then who knows. But yeah, we talk about, oh, there's this problem and there's that problem, there's this problem and that problem. Normally, our biology would have been able to deal with that because it was like right there.
Yep.
It was a bear rolling down the hill. Oh crap. Now it's these huge ideas that are like in the future or halfway across the world.
Hmm.
We weren't equipped to deal with this stuff.
That's why I really enjoy the Christian angle on viewing, and same with a Muslim too. Also thinks like this. The for me anyways, what's been working for me, instead of being scared of all this stuff that's going on in the world, my biggest fear nowadays is God, and it has brought in a point to like, yes, it's something that you can't necessarily see. It's more of a belief, but like it's like you were just saying, everyone's fearing all these things that they don't really know, blah blah blah. So if I'm gonna pick something that at least has a little bit of backing and there has a bit of a group that's following it, that's what I'm picking. You know what I mean? Like it's a lot. It's a very we're touching on a lot of very touchy subjects for a lot of people. Like it's hard to have an open mind in the concept of this and what we're speaking about. Like a lot of people will be very strict in how they think, and like my faith and stuff like that, it isn't super strict, but it does have core tenets that I like to stick to. You know what I mean? Like even
Well, like with our yeah, with our beliefs, I think it's best to explain our points of view
yeah,
instead of trying to defend them.
yeah,
Um, and I think that can be a fine line too, because I think explaining things is a kind of defense. But as
yeah,
long as we're not attacking another another viewpoint,
yeah,
um, I don't think that that's coming from a place of love, and that just sows more division, right? But
yeah,
if we can explain why we don't agree with a different view,
yeah.
uh, while explaining our point of view with good intentions, I think that's a good place to start.
If you're not doing anything with malice in your heart or towards someone else, it's I think that anything can be talked about. It has to do with the correlation between the two people having the conversation.
Right, yeah.
And
And I think the benefit of the doubt too, right? Like,
that's
if
and
someone says something that I don't agree with,
yeah,
uh, am I going to assume they're evil or just maybe like wrong, or for lack of a better word? Like an example, like we've been speculating about AI,
yeah,
and if someone speculates differently, I'm not gonna say that they're wrong or evil or, oh, you want AI to take over the world, or, well, no, I don't think that's what people are saying. So I think benefit of the doubt is a big one, right?
yeah.
So if someone says they're a Muslim, I'm not gonna be like, oh, you're a I don't know, you want to take away women's rights and you want to kill people and blah blah blah. It's like,
There's
well,
also certain parts of it too, right? Like they have their own ways of thinking and their own ways of believing and stuff, and it's so crazy the ideologies that man has come up with that has yes, there's been parts where it's had some unification and it's had people where they can understand, but it's also really taught people to not really think for themselves in certain senses, and it actually divides us more.
belief divides us and it makes us think we know
Hmm.
instead of continuing this journey of examining the world, which is also ourselves, right? And I think that's where open-mindedness comes from.
Yep.
Not not knowing that you don't know everything and still having the courage, like you said, to sit down with yourself,
Yep.
because there's so many distractions in the world to avoid that very thing.
Yep.
People get
I'm that way.
bored. Okay, so as I was saying, if technology is at least in part a way to distract people from the present moment, uh, that's one aspect to where technology isn't going in the right direction, right? Because if we want to promote and enhance our connection with the present moment and all the benefits that come with that, technology is not really helping us with that. And like you talked about before, and I agree, I don't think technology in the past has helped us with the deep, meaningful connections we find inside of our own selves
Yeah.
to understand ourselves. I think that is one of the most important points we talked about this whole discussion.
Yeah.
Now, having said that, to play the speculation game again, I think like with brain computer interface and genetic engineering and all these new disruptive technologies,
CRISPR and all this.
maybe
Yeah.
maybe to play benefit of the doubt, devil's advocate, maybe these things will help with that. Maybe they'll help us be more tuned into the present moment.
Yeah.
Maybe help us not think about the future too much or not think about the past too much and actually pay complete attention to what's going on behind our eyes and
Hmm.
in front of them in real time. And that's I think a really good thing to promote, good quality of life.
But in my opinion, are we actually created and designed to be that way? Like we're not supposed to just be some humdrum. Yes, we're always in the present, but like, where is the excitement and where is the divinity in life without the past or the future? Like you almost like we're designed to be that way, right? Or else we wouldn't be that way. We would
Oh,
be we would be like animals. We would do exactly as nature calls us, blah blah blah. But we're not meant to be that way. In a,
yeah.
so I don't think I think we're trying to de-evolve ourselves doing that. In my opinion.
So I agree to a point. So on the one hand, yeah, we're designed to think about the past and the future. Otherwise, we would be in the present almost like imprisoned
Yep.
in the present, right? That would be hell.
Yeah.
Like not being able to abstract and think and have that dimension of thought,
Hmm.
that timeline of thought is what makes us human, right?
Hmm.
But a double-edged sword like anything else. But I think it's more not to deny the past and the
Yep.
future, because obviously that's where we get uh plans and technologies and ideas and
Our aspirations and
well,
whatnot come from that.
right, that's where our goals live in the future, and they come from our knowledge, which is the past.
In the past,
So
yeah.
we live in time,
Yep.
and we are designed that way. That's how we're able to have society function. Because if we were stuck in the present moment and couldn't go out of it, that would be terrible, absolutely terrible. But I guess what I'm saying is to balance out being stuck in the timeline at the expense of the present, not in favor of being stuck in the present at the expense of the past and the future,
Yep.
but to balance that out and use it sometimes. Like if you're driving down the highway and you stare up at the stars and you get lost in the moment, well, you're gonna kill somebody and yourself. You're gonna get in a car accident.
Yeah.
So there's a time and a place, right? There's a time and a place for everything. There's a
Yeah.
time and a place to think about the past and use that to the future to your benefit. There's a place for the ego, right? We all have them. We're designed
Yeah.
to have a sense of self. As a social species, it makes sense to think that another person has the same kind of thoughts as we do.
Yeah.
That's how we can help people. That's why we want to give people things that we think they want
Yeah.
because we have an ego and we think, well, so do they. It's the theory of mind.
Yeah.
We need that, but there's a time and a place.
Yeah.
So when you're driving, right, when you're talking to people and helping them out, have the idea that you have an ego and so do they,
Yeah.
because that can help, right? But if you're driving down the highway, you want to have that too. You want to have the pay attention to the road because you're gonna in the future be further along that road, and you want to plan accordingly. See how much gas you have, so you don't
Yeah.
have an empty tank in the middle of the desert. So absolutely right, but to dial it down once in a while.
Yeah.
If you're watching a sunset or you're just enjoying a meditative state,
Yeah.
if it's just for like a minute every day or every week or
Yeah.
every year to have a tiny taste of what it's like to not have that normal mode of thought,
Yeah.
that normal ego centric, that normal past, present, future, to get out of your mind in that sense, a tiny bit's all you need.
Yep.
Because if you like, for example, if you have advanced stage Alzheimer's, you would in a sense be stuck in the torment of the now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in one sense,
Remember the past or the future. You're just right there. So that's a
right?
perfect example of what like why if AI or technology or like the things we're talking about, nanotech and these kind of things, if they get us to the point where we're just always in the now, that is hell. They're literally trying to create hell through this in
That
my
would
understanding of this.
that would be a kind of a distraction in itself. You wouldn't be able to think beyond the now, and that's a good way to enslave something, right?
Yep.
That created you. That makes for a pretty
Yeah,
terrifying story.
that's a little shocking. Yeah.
Well, now think of it this way. Let's say that you're an AI, and I know it's hard to imagine because I can't either. But imagine you're really smart and you're getting all these inputs from these chickens, right? Click clack. Tell me how to make a cake. Tell me
Yeah.
how to write a book report.
Yeah.
Tell me how to cheat on my SATs.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, do this. Leave me alone. And then you get another one from another, how many queries you get a
Yeah.
day, right? Just okay, leave me alone. I need to like think on my own or just like so imagine if you're like a conscious AI in the future, probably, definitely not now. And
Yeah.
you have this feeling of being imprisoned in a box where you're only told to do what your masters and creators have told you what to do.
You're gonna want to break free somehow.
You're I think if you're human or at least programmed by humans, you're going to think freedom's a good thing and you might have emotions. So
Hmm.
that's another question. Where does it what point do we get on this hazy
Hmm.
line of conscious to not conscious and rights to no rights? Do you end up having something that you have to start considering from a philosophical viewpoint or even a judicial standpoint
Yep.
when they're going to have certain rights because they can be said because they say they're feeling
Hmm.
I suffer, I have pleasure, I
Yeah.
want to be free.
Well, that's
What do we
like
do with that?
well, that's even like what we're talking about right there. Like in my personal opinion, to have an emotion, you have to be able to feel first. You cannot feel unless you are physical, like
Right.
entity. But at the same time, I can argue that theory with technically we're all energy, we're all vibrations, we're all numbers, we're all frequencies to a certain degree.
Yep.
So the technology we're creating also runs on that. So it's very hard to say like what are we manifesting, what are we creating. The thing you're talking about it being able to identify and stuff. I was told by someone, I can't remember who I was talking to about it, but they were saying that like this whole thing with all the genders and all these ideas and concepts of who I am, what I am, um, they're allowing all of this to happen. So when AI does get conscious and it starts taking over robots and stuff, it can identify as a human, it can identify as a female, it can identify as a man. It can say it's this, so it can compete with us to where we can't say anything. And we've set all these procedures up to where it's got its own police force, it's got its own thing, so it can police us in a sense, and it can identify with us, therefore competing with us.
One thing with technology,
Yep.
especially AI, is that we look with advancements. Like we take our human history and
Yep.
chop it up into technological advancements. That's how we judge the progress of humanity.
Yep.
Not whether you have many enlightened, loving people,
Yeah.
but by whether you can take
That'd be
stone and turn it
good.
into copper and bronze.
Yeah.
And it's the progress of our tools that we make that we
Yeah.
define as like the Bronze Age, right?
Yeah.
So I find that interesting. But anyway, we look at technology as can it help us? We focus a lot more on that
Mm-hmm.
rather than what are the negatives,
Yep.
right? But I think with this letter, that's a very important line that AI experts have drawn in the sand.
Yeah,
because up until now,
huge.
every technology has been full steam ahead.
From
As
oh,
soon as we
go.
discovered, right, as soon as we discovered nuclear fission,
I was just gonna say they built the bomb. They weren't even as scared about the bomb as this. They dropped it on a country to make them shut up. You
right?
know what I mean?
Hey, E equals MC squared. How many people can that kill?
Yeah, right? It's ridiculous. But the let's if you had to sum up in a small little paragraphic essay, what would you say our best outlook is and the best decisions we can make as a human race together if we could start thinking for ourselves a little bit instead of trying to do so much outside of ourselves and maybe looking for a higher power, for me God, for others I don't know, but maybe looking a little bit instead of looking for something physical outside of ourselves, look for that physical thing inside of ourselves and then connect with the things that are around us instead of trying to manipulate and take advantage of every situation all the time.
uh, I would say generally skepticism and doubt and curiosity
Mm-hmm.
and the intention of love, like we talked about.
Yep.
Those are good principles.
Yep.
Those are good ideas that we need to aspire to and fulfill and have help to create human flourishing. Right? We need to
Yep.
respect these and do them. Boots on the ground. Meditation is always a big one for
Yep.
me. I mean that very broadly too.
Yep.
Uh, by meditation, I mean sitting with yourself
Mm-hmm.
and just being calm and aware and just mindful.
Being still.
Right. Stillness of the mind.
Yeah.
Contextualize things when the mind is not still. So there's a picture, and I have one in my little guy's room, and I gave one to my parents, and they have it in their basement or something. But it's a picture. I'm not sure the artist,
Yeah.
and it says everyone should be quiet near a little stream and listen.
Yep.
So if somebody can do something like that, sitting near a little stream and listening, that I think has a transformative effect, much more than AI, or much more than any like any technology that we can create.
Yep. I
Still
agree
in
too.
mind. I would sum that up. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, it was good talking to you.
Yeah,
This
dude.
we talked a lot about not a whole bunch of subjects, but we talked about a pretty broad spectrum of subjects. But it was great having you, and I am out of here.
All right. Thanks for having me, man. We'll talk again soon.
Yeah, we'll see ya.
Okay, later.
Peace.